Hi everyone and welcome to today's painting tutorial where I'll take you through how I painted this Space Marine from the Dark Krakens chapter. A very cool chapter, definitely worth looking into. So, over a Chaos Black undercoat, I'm just going to begin by applying a relatively watered down application of 20% Naggaroth Night and about 80% Abaddon Black. And once that's done, I'm just going to begin edge highlighting with Naggaroth Night. Now for all of the armor, this will essentially just be an edge highlight with the exception of the shoulder pad, the arms, and the gun casing. So with those, I'll be doing essentially covering it entirely with Naggaroth Night, but we'll get to that in just a moment. And just continue following that step all around the armor, so just make sure to take your time with it. And as I've just mentioned with the gun casing, just apply a full base coat over that. And just the shoulder pad as well. So next up, across all of the armor, with the exception of the parts that we've just covered entirely with Naggaroth Night, I'm going to begin highlighting the Naggaroth Night and the rest of the black armor with Mechanicus Standard Grey. Now from what I could tell when I was looking at this color scheme, it did look as though the rest of the power armor, with the exception of the parts that are covered in purple of course, was essentially just black armor, but I decided I did want to add that little hint of purple throughout the entirety of the miniature, which is why of course I decided to do the Naggaroth Night as a base coat. And now I'm just going to begin highlighting all of the black armor just to make it as though it was just black, but if you look close enough you will see that little hint of Naggaroth Night. And as you can see, I've just gone back to correct some of that Mechanicus Standard Grey as it was a little bit too thick for my liking. And as you can see, as always, not a lot of paint on my brush when doing these finer sort of highlights. And especially around an area such as the helmet, as they do tend to draw a lot of attention when you look at a Space Marine, in my opinion. And for this particular color scheme, it being that darker tone, I do want the focus to be more so on the lenses, which we'll get to very, very soon. And now just to show you the final highlight for the black parts of the armor, I'm just going to be using some Dawnstone. Of course, I haven't gone ahead and highlighted the entirety of the miniature for the purposes of the video, but essentially you just follow this step around the entirety of the black armor. So with all of the black armor now applied, I'm going to move on to the purple parts of the armor just to begin highlighting that, and the gun casing. Now this is one of the coolest purples I've ever come across. I actually just found it by chance when I was scrolling through Reddit one time, when I came across a post people were talking about some of their favorite colors, and I did check, I would say almost all of them out, and I ended up buying this one, and it is a really beautiful color. So it's called Hex Lichen, and it is by Vallejo. So I definitely recommend, if you're a fan of purple, checking this color out. So as you can see, just a few thin coats just going over the Naggaroth Knight, and only really in the deep recesses leaving some of that Naggaroth purple. Naggaroth Knight, I should say. So as you can see with the arm, almost doing a full coverage of the Hex Lichen, but just in those deeper recesses, just leaving some of that Naggaroth Knight. And just as a final highlight for the purple parts, I'll be using Genestealer Purple by Citadel. So really just focus this highlight as an edge highlight. as you can see, just across the gun casing, just to bring it out that little bit more. And with that step now done, I'm going to be moving on to what was possibly my favorite part of this miniature to paint, was the pink lenses. Now again, I was just going off the artwork that I had to work with, I should say, for this color scheme. And I decided to go with pink, and a very vibrant sort of pink, where essentially it looks as though the lenses will be glowing. So just really take your time with this, as it's not exactly the traditional way to do lenses. So with the base coat of Screamer Pink done, I'm going to be moving on with Pink Horror by Citadel. So really just focusing at the front of the lens, and I am going to bring that down into the crevices there of the lens. And very carefully now with some Fulgrim Pink, just focusing that at the front. And then getting my miniature in a comfortable position facing the other way, just so I can work around and get the other side of the lens. And at this point I felt it was just a little bit too vibrant with the Fulgrim Pink, so I've just corrected that a little bit there. And now just with some Emperor's Children from Citadel, just to begin finishing off the sort of glow effect for these lenses. So as you can see, I did go back a couple of times just to correct that. And of course, as always, just to finish off the lens, just a small white dot just at the back of the lens. And follow those steps for the scopes on the gun, and of course the other lens. So with the lenses now done, I wanted to work on the shoulder pad symbol. Now when I was looking at this chapter symbol, originally just sort of looking at it, especially compared to the other chapter symbols I've been working on lately, I thought this would be relatively easy. Yeah, I was pretty wrong about that. But with that being said, it was very rewarding when I ended up finishing it. So any acrylic white will do just fine for this chapter symbol. And one thing I should mention as well, it is a good idea just to have some of that hex lichen prepared to correct any errors that you might make, and I made plenty of them during the process of this. It's mostly, so getting this initial shape of the Kraken's head is relatively easy. It's more so when you get to the tentacles that you will really need to take your time. And I'd also recommend using just your paint palette to practice this symbol, or for that matter really any chapter symbol that you might be working on for the first time, just to help get that little bit extra practice in before going ahead and attempting it on the miniature. And as always, I don't have the paint too thick, especially when doing something such as a chapter symbol, just so I can make sure that if I need to, I can correct it with ease. And once you have the vast majority of the outline of the chapter symbol completed, you can begin going back and correcting it with the color of the background. As I actually found that helped when it came to the point of reshaping the tentacles, that it was that much easier to just have the hex lichen ready. But I just wanted to show you as much as I can of this. And as always, have a reference up in front of you whilst painting, especially the sort of complicated chapter symbols that are out there. So for the grenade, I kept it pretty simple. I just used some deep green and light green from Vallejo. But of course, if you're just using Citadel paints, I would recommend Caliban green, Warpstone glow, and an edge highlight of Moot green. And of course, you can shade them as well. For the purposes of this particular grenade, I didn't go over the top with it. I did keep it pretty basic. And now for the pouches, I've just used a base coat of German grey as the first edge highlight, and then approximately a 50-50 mix of German grey and white for the one and only highlight, as I did want to keep everything pretty dark on this miniature where possible, with the exception of obviously the chapter symbol and the guns and the purple arm as well. And with the majority of the miniature now done, I'm just going to finish it all off by painting all of the metal parts, starting with a base coat of black metal by scale 75. And I have mentioned this range of paints a few times in previous videos, but just in case you haven't seen one of my videos before, with the exception of this one, I highly recommend checking out the Scale 75 Steel series. Just really fantastic metallics, and they also have little instruction booklets if you're quite new to using metallics, and they're really helpful as well. And now just a simple highlight all around the metal parts with thrash metal. And just to finish off all of the metal parts, I'm going to be using some heavy metal, again by scale 75. And here are some completed images of the Dark Kraken Space Marine. Now, if you're interested in the base and the golden arm, I did actually make separate videos for those, so I will include those in the description below. So I hope you've enjoyed watching me paint this awesome Space Marines chapter, the Dark Krakens. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.